Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast, available every morning on Apple, Spotify or wherever you listen. It's Tuesday, the 24th of December here in London. I'm Caroline Hepker. Coming up today, looking for success where his predecessor failed. France's new Prime Minister says he wants a deal that brings the deficit down to almost 5%. 2024 was dominated by big tech and AI, but can the world's biggest firms repeat their success in the year ahead? Plus, after a year of turmoil, could 2025 deliver more stability for the Middle East? We'll get the thoughts of our regional correspondents. Let's start with a roundup of our top stories. France's Prime Minister wants a budget deal that will bring the country's deficit down to almost 5%, a target that was also sought by ousted predecessor Michel Barnier. Francois Bayrou says he is pursuing a balanced agreement that doesn't unreasonably target companies that create wealth and jobs.
I am not for targeting business. I am for its protection. I want everyone to realise that this is where our riches lie. I think it is necessary to recognise that big groups and small businesses make up a single economy.
Francois Bayrou speaking there during an interview with the French channel BFM. He was speaking via a translator. His comments come just hours after his cabinet was named. Amongst the appointees, experienced finance professional Eric Lombard, who will serve as finance minister. But the new government faces a difficult task in finding support for the budget in the National Assembly, where Emmanuel Macron's lawmakers are in the minority and opposition forces have shown little desire for compromise. Now, Keir Starmer has delivered his first Christmas message as UK leader. After almost 6 months in office, the Prime Minister struck an optimistic tone, despite criticism of his management of the economy. Starmer says that he's now looking towards a more positive 2025.
This Christmas, I will be hoping for peace, particularly in the Middle East, as the birthplace of the Christmas story. I'll be looking towards a better, brighter future for every person, and celebrating the joy and wonder that Christmas brings.
The Labour leader also used the traditional message to thank those who'll be spending Christmas serving others, including the emergency services and armed forces. Meanwhile, the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, says that it's time for reflection and supporting those who need assistance. Now to corporate news. Honda has announced plans for a years-long deal to acquire rival Nissan. The news comes as Japanese automakers struggle to keep up with a competitive global industry. Our global automotive editor, Craig Trudell, says shareholders in the companies may query the move.
Real questions about just how happy shareholders across the various companies involved are going to be with this. To put it plainly, I mean, this is really Honda coming to Nissan's rescue. Honda will, take the lead in forming this holding company that Nissan will be a part of. Maybe Mitsubishi Motors will join. And the big question is, where does Renault stand in all this as Nissan's biggest shareholder?
Bloomberg's Craig Trudell speaking there. The agreement will create one of the world's largest car makers, helping the firms to compete with Chinese manufacturers and Japanese heavyweight Toyota. Nissan's shares fell 7.3% after the announcement. Honda's rose 14.4%, with analysts calling the deal a takeover that will take time to yield benefits. Now, a key drive of equity market action over the last year was artificial intelligence, with the Magnificent Seven powering the S&P 500 to new record highs. So how big of a role will AI play in the year ahead? We've been asking Thomas Raymond. He is investment management partner at Callan Family Office.
It's evolving. So it started with AI producers and then AI consumers and now AI proof of concept. So what we're seeing over the past year and a half with this AI overstory is you're seeing it more and more mentioned more and more in earnings calls. So it's not just the Mag 7 that is embracing this, and they've got a lead, right? They've had their valuations balloon, but you're seeing it across this concept of AI and embracing it going across the entire corporate landscape.
Thomas Raymond is investment management partner at Callan Family Office speaking there. Analysis by Bloomberg estimates that at least $1 trillion of spending is needed for data centres, electricity supplies and communications networks that will power the attempt to deliver on AI's promise to transform everything from medicine to customer service. Now, Germany's president has called for unity after a fatal attack in the city of Magdeburg. Frank-Walter Steinmeier acknowledged citizens' concerns during his Christmas address after an assailant drove a car into a busy Christmas market, killing 5 people. A 50-year-old doctor of Saudi Arabian origin has been detained on suspicion of multiple counts of murder, attempted murder and assault. The incident has sparked debate about immigration in the country. And Luigi Mangione, the suspect in the killing of the US healthcare boss Brian Thompson, has pleaded not guilty to 11 murder and terror charges. The insurance company chief executive was shot dead earlier this month, walking into a conference at a New York hotel. Mangione appeared handcuffed and shackled in the Manhattan court as he responded to charges including first and second degree murder, criminal possession of a weapon and possessing a forged driver's license. Those are our top stories for you this morning. Thinking about the markets right now. So FTSE 100 futures this morning are powering higher, up by 0.6%. The S&P 500 E-mini futures, they are treading water, although we did see the Magnificent 7 stocks jump almost 1.5% on Monday, only briefly hit by the downturn in US consumer confidence. MSCI Asia Pacific Index this morning up 0.3%. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index is stronger. Oil prices climbing in thin trading and Bitcoin hovering just under $94,000. Those are the markets. In a moment, we are going to be looking ahead to the year when it comes to the Middle East, of course, dramatic changes that we have seen in so many countries there. So we're going to be bringing in Onur Ant in Istanbul for a discussion about the Middle East in just a moment, and be thinking about the year end in markets around the world with our own Mary Nicola. But before that, an interesting little story. It's the festive season. I wonder if in all of the holiday parties maybe that you've been to, whether you've been eating more caviar. There's a really nice piece on the Bloomberg Terminal from my colleague Andrea Strong, who's been writing with lots of caviar recommendations about how it's increasingly popular, and apparently it's going to be popping up on menus in 2025 even more than before. She's got all the data listed and how it's actually a booming global market because of the improved quality of farmed sturgeon, something I didn't know. Have a read of it. It's on the Bloomberg Terminal and also on the website this morning. Now, stocks in Asia are gaining in relatively thin holiday trading this morning. Many markets will be closed on Wednesday, except for China and Japan. And yet we're coming to the end of the year, and the S&P 500 is on the way to a stellar annual return. Joining me now is Bloomberg's multi-asset reporter, Mary Nicola. Mary, good morning. Lovely to speak to you.
Good morning.
What a year it's been in US stocks, and especially for the Magnificent 7. How would you characterise it?
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's been a stellar year for the U.S. And to be fair, it has also been backed by strong fundamentals. So, for example, a lot of the companies have come out with really strong earnings time and time again. Sure, in the last quarter, it wasn't as strong as many had expected, but they were still pretty strong and pretty resilient. And then when you compare that to what some of the other markets are delivering, it still bodes pretty well for a lot of the companies in the US and most importantly for the Magnificent 7.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in the last quarter, S&P 500 seeing a gain of in the region of 3.7%. The MSCI Asia Pacific Index heading for a quarterly loss. So US stocks are radiating all of this holiday cheer and sparkle. And the big question is, are we going to see things broaden out to the other 493 stocks next year? Are we going to see as strong a performance in 2025?
I think for the U.S., it really depends on how growth plays out. I think if growth continues to be resilient, especially in the face of the fact that we know that the Fed is not planning on cutting rates as quickly as we had initially anticipated heading into 2024, the main thing has to be that activity data holds up well. So they're not getting the impetus from monetary policy, so they need the impetus from growth. And as long as that continues, there's no reason why we shouldn't see the U.S. equities broadening out into the 493 and supportive. The only real caveat is just how this trade policy and fiscal policy plays out. The uncertainty surrounding that. So last time when we saw that the trade policy, there was a lot of concern about business investment. There was a lot of concern about how companies within the U.S. will be able to cope with something like tariffs. And I think that is really the key wild card. But so far, if activity data holds up, then they should also do well.
Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of questions about how Trump's policies may affect so many asset classes. What's the perspective from Asia on China assets, for example, that have also been mired with their own deep difficulties?
Well, you mentioned earlier about the poor performance of the MSCI Asia, and it has been a really difficult quarter for Asian markets. So they're battling weak China growth, not to mention the underwhelming messages that we're getting from China. So they're saying all the right things, but it hasn't been a clear follow through in terms of policy, the strong dollar, uncertainty surrounding U.S. trade policy. And of course, we had the political drama in Korea that put the market under stress. So the lingering concerns over U.S. policy uncertainty, the lingering concerns over what's going to come from China policy, any sort of concrete stimulus that comes through to really bolster growth, these are still questions that are weighing on sentiment in Asia and are likely to continue to resonate into the new year.
Yeah, Mary, thank you so much, yes, for that thought then, as we come to the end of 2024, thinking about the new year. Thank you so much for your time. Mary Nicola is Bloomberg's multi-asset reporter. Good to speak to you. Now, the past year has seen the Middle East undergo dramatic change, only part of which is the future of Syria and the growing influence of Turkey. Now, Turkey is both a member of NATO and yet also a participant in the BRICS dialogue, and Ankara is positioning itself as a key regional power broker and a stabilising force in the Middle East. Ankara maintains ties with Russia and also with incoming President Donald Trump. It's a very complex foreign policy landscape, and yet the country's economic outlook remains quite precarious. I thought as we come to the end of 2024, we should think about this in particular and bring in Bloomberg editor Onur Ant, who is live in Istanbul for us this morning. Onur, good to speak to you. The emergence of Turkey, how has that happened? What has been the background?
Well, the emergence of Turkey, I think, has been in the works for quite some time now. But I think what brought the country to the fore this recently has been the developments in Syria, where longtime dictator Bashar al-Assad has been toppled in a very rapid and unexpected way over the past few weeks. And we have seen that Turkey sort of took the lead in both engaging the new rulers and is restoring diplomatic ties with the country. And everyone suddenly sort of woke up to the fact that Turkey, at least in its region and its surroundings, was a very powerful and key player, something that incoming U.S. President Donald Trump also very recently talked about publicly. And that's probably part of the reason now Turkey, more than at any other point in the recent history, is now being looked at as this emerging regional power with influence across the Middle East and North Africa.
Yeah. I mean, Turkey's expanding influence then. I mean, they do have vested interests in Syria, particularly in preventing Kurdish autonomy near its borders. And as I mentioned in the introduction, a huge balancing act. NATO, BRICS, Ukraine, and dealing with Trump, that they are, doing a lot of juggling politically, aren't they?
They are, and it is exactly that, as you said, Caroline. It's a balancing act. Syria is a good microcosm for us to be able to see the kind of competing interests and priorities that the country has. On the one hand, it has this national security issue, a top priority one for Ankara, which is to prevent Kurdish forces, armed forces, from basically coming too close to its borders where they can launch attacks into Turkey. But at the same time, those forces happen to be backed by the US, which is a key Turkey ally, which is a NATO ally for Turkey, and a country that it has had great relationship with historically, although those ties haven't been that strong over the last 10 years or so.
Turkey's economic outlook, though, is not that strong.
It's true, and it's probably the Achilles heel, so to speak, for the country. Despite all these regional ambitions that Turkey has, its economy has been doing somewhat less than stellar over the last decade, especially when you look at the last 2 decades under Erdogan. Yeah, the economy has more than tripled in size or quadrupled, but we have seen currency crises pretty much every couple of years up until last year. When we look ahead, though, we see that coming from an ultra-tight monetary policy, which has driven down demand, we're going to see economic growth probably around the range of 3% this year. And it will slightly pick up to 4% next year and eventually to 5% in 2027.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.